Hello, everyone. Today I want to introduce you to one very interesting and frightening story. As you may have noticed, all my stories are quite compelling. I found this one on Reddit and thought it deserved your attention. Make yourselves comfortable and enjoy. Pleasant listening. On the plane flying from New York to Stockholm, I was reading a book. It was late 1984, the eve of the new year, 1985, and I had just turned 30. I was heading to Sweden for the Christmas holidays to visit my mother, who had moved there to live with her new husband. I knew the Atlantic Ocean stretched beneath us, but there was nothing to see through the window, only solid, impenetrable darkness. A flight attendant approached and asked whether she should take my glass. Taking advantage of the moment, I asked for another drink, then lit a cigarette, set the book aside, and fixed my gaze on the emptiness beyond the window. My thoughts drifted to what I had accomplished in life so far. To my disappointment, I realized there wasn't much to boast about. And yet, I wasn't unhappy. No depression or anything like that. At home, a loving girlfriend was waiting for me. We had a perfectly decent apartment. Complaining would have been ridiculous. And still, my mind kept insisting that something was missing. Daily life, no matter how pleasant, filled me with a mild sense of boredom. I often caught myself dreaming of something greater. The flight attendant returned with another glass. After finishing it, drowsiness washed over me, and I stubbed out my cigarette in the empty glass. Soon after, I drifted off. No one woke me. No one on the plane at all. Instead, I awoke to the clinking of cutlery against plates. My head felt heavy, and when I opened my eyes, I couldn't focus. Voices echoed around me. Judging by their tone, people were displeased about something, but I couldn't tell where the sound was coming from. Everything swam before me. I squinted, trying to make out anything at all, and realized I was sitting at a table with 5 other people. Beside me, a young woman who looked to be in her early 20s, wearing a red dress, was chatting with an elderly man. None of them seemed to notice me, or at least, they didn't give any sign that my presence mattered. Lowering my gaze, I saw that I was wearing a tuxedo with sharp lapels, a dress shirt with a spread collar and French cuffs, and a black bow tie. Only moments ago, on the plane over the Atlantic, I had been wearing jeans. This sudden, inexplicable change of surroundings suggested a dream, yet everything around me felt completely real. "Excuse me," I said to the woman. "What's going on? Where am I?" "Oh. You've woken up," she exclaimed. "Let's raise a toast to our new guest." Everyone lifted their glasses. Wait, the woman interrupted. "What's your name?" "Me? James." "Well then, to James," she said, and the others echoed, "To James." "Sorry," I said, "but how did I get here?" "I was flying to Stockholm and then." "Well," the elderly man began, "the first thing you need to know is that we have no idea what brought you here. This is the Clockwork Hotel. At least, that's what it says on everything around here. Take a look, for example, at the bottom of your glass." Only then did I notice the plate of food in front of me and the wine glass in my hand. Skeptically, I lifted the glass and looked at the base. The Clockwork Hotel. I tried to stand, but I still felt weak. The woman beside me gently pushed me back into my seat. "Listen to what August has to say," she said. "Yes," the old man continued. "The second thing you need to know is that there is no way out. At least, none of us knows of one. I've been here, I don't even know, more than 50 years now. I've explored the hotel in every direction, left, right, up, and down. It's very easy to get lost." "Explored?" I asked. "What do you mean?" "You see, young man, it appears this hotel is infinite. An endless number of rooms, corridors, and floors. Every elevator has 20 buttons. But once you reach the very top or bottom floor, a new set of 20 buttons appears, leading even farther up or down. Of course, it's impossible to say for certain that it truly is infinite, but I've never been able to find a lobby. Infinite, I scoffed. Are you out of your mind? That's impossible. What is this, some kind of sick joke? No, James, the woman said calmly. This is very real. This is madness, I muttered, trying to stand again. Check your pocket, August said. Reluctantly, I obeyed and felt a key. Attached to it was a leather tag stamped with the number 45. That's the key to your room, James, said one of the guests, a tall man about my age. I don't want to be here, I snapped, heading toward what I assumed was the nearest exit. The woman in the red dress stood and followed me. Please, at least let me show you to your room, James. I was exhausted. My head still felt foggy. Maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to rest a little before trying to leave, I thought. Besides, I assumed there might be a phone in the room. All right, I said. Show me your damn room. Wait, James, August stopped me. There's a third thing you should know before you go. What now, old man? I asked, still deeply suspicious of all these people. You see, there's a reason I couldn't explore the hotel as thoroughly as I wanted. I always went as far as I could in every direction, but never past midnight. And? I asked. What happens at midnight? That, August said, is exactly what I wanted to tell you. Right now, according to the clock on that wall, it's almost 10. He pointed to a large brass clock behind me. 10 p.m., in case you can't tell. Which you can't, because there are no windows in this room. And even if there were, they wouldn't help. I looked around again and realized he was right. There were no windows. 2 hours from now, the old man continued, you must be in your room, or in one of ours, with the door locked. That's when they come. They? I asked. Who are they? Don't speak in riddles. We call them the children, August said. But we don't know who, or even what, they are. They make sounds like children playing. We suspect they're the ones who make sure we always have food. But they don't want to be seen. Many guests have arrived here just like you, and then vanished, under the sound of terrible screams we all heard while hiding in our rooms. So if you don't want to perish at the hands of some unknown nightmare, I advise you to stay in your room after midnight. You'll know they're coming when all the elevators begin moving at once. Cute little horror story, I smirked. He never said they were ghosts, James, the woman in red said quietly. And I've heard them too. If you press your ear to the door tonight and listen, you'll hear them running through the corridors, playing. Who are you? I asked as we stepped into the hallway. I mean, what's your name? I'm Cassandra, she replied. I've been here since I was 10 years old, so this hotel is practically all I know. You can't be serious, I said. I don't believe you. This is far too contrived. Do you remember where you were before you woke up here? We were walking down a corridor that stretched at least 100 meters ahead of us. Doors lined both sides, each marked with its own number. Elevator indicator lights glowed at either end of the hall. There were no staircases. 2 identical corridors crossed ours at right angles. The architecture was old-fashioned, as if from the 1920s, and the air smelled faintly stale. Near the ceiling, I noticed ventilation grills emitting a soft, rusty scraping sound. There was no way to crawl through them. I remember it very clearly, Cassandra said, smiling so innocently that her story began to feel more plausible to my subconscious. I was playing in the garden. My family had a summer villa in London. I don't remember much about the city itself, though sometimes I dream about it, or at least I think I do. But I remember every room in that house. The garden was wonderful. So many colors. My parents were inside when it happened. They didn't see me disappear. The last thing I remember is pricking my finger on a rose thorn. It was such a beautiful flower. I wanted to bring it inside to show my mother. My mother. I don't remember her face anymore, but she appears in my dreams sometimes. And in those moments, I can hear her voice. Fascinating story, I drawled, emphasizing the last word. This is your room. She entered with me. The room contained a fairly large bed, almost king-sized. Cassandra said that all the rooms looked the same, and that outside the window there was always eternal night. The curtains were drawn. I walked over and pulled them aside. I told you, Cassandra exclaimed. There was nothing outside the window but darkness. It looked exactly like the void beyond the airplane window I had been staring into only moments before. I tried to open the window, but to no avail. It wouldn't open. It wouldn't break. Believe me, we've tried everything. I muttered. Reinforced glass. It's more than that, James. It can't be broken. You know, the only impossible thing here is what you just said. Look, Cassandra, there's a phone. It's connected. I'll make a few calls, and no one ever answers, she finished. And no one ever calls. I need a cigarette, I snapped irritably, lifting the receiver and dialing the first number that came to mind, my girlfriend's. I waited for 5 minutes while Cassandra stood beside me, clearly certain that nothing would come of it. She was right. Still, I hung up with the intention of trying again later. My girlfriend was probably just asleep. You people are terrible at thinking positively, I said. There's always a solution. Hear me? Every problem has a solution. I'm an engineer, and I refuse to believe there's no way out. No one can build something infinite or indestructible. Do you understand? It's absurd. I hear you, James, Cassandra said calmly. But you're still coming to your senses. In time, you'll understand. Tomorrow I'll go down to the lobby and get as far away from you people as possible. I just need to sleep off this horrible fog I'm in. I suspect I, and maybe all of us, were drugged and dumped here by some complete lunatics. Perhaps someone did put us here, Cassandra replied. But by very unusual means. That's certain. In any case, you're right. You should sleep. Join us for breakfast tomorrow in the bistro before you try to leave. Before Cassandra left my room, I called after her. What year was it when you arrived here? I wanted to see whether she'd give the correct answer, considering her current age and the age she claimed to have been when she arrived. If she was telling the truth, she would know it exactly. It was 1940, she said. During the Blitz. I snorted. What? It feels like you're deliberately giving me the most absurd answers possible. Good night, James. She looked offended, but I didn't care. After all, I was the victim here. I woke in the middle of the night. I must have passed out quickly, since I was still wearing the tuxedo, though I could hardly call it mine. It clearly didn't belong to me. My wristwatch showed early morning, but the wall clock read 3 a.m. The room was silent. I turned on the night lamp, got out of bed, and went into the bathroom. It was large, almost luxurious, with a jacuzzi and exotic plants hanging from shelves near the ceiling. I turned on the faucet and splashed water on my face. Where the hell had I ended up? After using the toilet, I returned to the room. For a long time, I stood by the window, staring into the darkness, trying to make sense of it. I thought the window might be covered by something, but I could see no texture at all. It truly felt like staring into empty space. What kind of technology could create such an illusion? I kept staring. I wanted a cigarette, but mine were gone. Without cigarettes, I was going to lose my mind here, and sooner rather than later. God, at least let there be coffee. Without my vices, I couldn't think. My thoughts were interrupted by a sound outside the door. I approached and pressed my ear against it. It sounded like a group of children playing, exactly as the old man had said. I heard their small footsteps and could almost make out the words they were saying, but only almost. As if their sounds merely resembled words, like echoes heard distantly in a dream. Then came the sound of something falling to the floor. I considered opening the door to see what was going on. I even placed my hand on the handle. But there was something strange about the sounds, something unsettling. I remembered what August had said about the danger of going outside. My rational mind retreated, giving way to instinct. That wasn't like me, but something deep inside me desperately did not want to see whatever was moving in the corridor. After that, sleep was impossible. I stood by the door for a long time, then sat on the bed and tried to collect my thoughts, but my mind was foggy. I woke again, still on the bed, without noticing when I had fallen asleep. When I looked at the clock, it was 8 a.m. Someone was knocking on my door. It was Cassandra. Beside her stood an elderly woman I hadn't seen at dinner. "Good morning. I'm Elizabeth," she said. "I'm sorry I missed you yesterday. I spent the evening in the library." I introduced myself and turned toward Cassandra. "You mentioned breakfast earlier," I said. "Please tell me there's coffee." "Of course there is." "Oh, thank God. Do you believe in God?" Elizabeth asked. "That's just an expression," I replied. The old woman looked disappointed. During breakfast, a typical hotel breakfast, I tried to extract a few more answers. "How many people live in this hotel?" I asked. "I mean, if it's truly infinite, then the number of people here must also be infinite, right? Even if only one room out of 1,000,000,000,000 is occupied, the hotel would still contain an infinite number of guests." "Are you a mathematician?" August asked. "I'm an engineer, so I understand math." "That's wonderful," said the tall man. "Finally, someone with a brain. In all the time I've been here, and it's been nearly 10 years now, we haven't had anyone competent. And I mean truly competent. No one with any useful skills." "Speak for yourself," August muttered. "I used to be a field marshal." Yes, we know," the tall man waved him off. "Listen, I don't want to offend anyone, but just look at us. Before I got here, I was a clerk. Cassandra was a child. And Elizabeth, no offense, you were a prostitute in Constantinople, and now all you do is read books." "They're an excellent escape from reality, Roger," Elizabeth replied calmly. Roger ignored her and continued. "And Aileen here?" He pointed at a middle-aged Chinese woman who hadn't said a word until now. "She spent her days cleaning an office building in Shanghai." "And Peter?" Roger nodded toward a balding, heavy-set man in his 40s. "Peter was in prison for murdering his unfaithful wife. We try to keep knives away from him." Roger laughed. "No. Seriously. None of us has any useful skills." "I realized long ago that I made a mistake," Peter muttered, but no one listened. "Well," I said, still convinced I was hearing fiction, "don't be too hard on yourselves. If you pick 6 people at random on Earth, odds are they'll be ordinary." "Do you really think we were chosen at random?" August asked. "I've always wondered, do we have something in common? Was there some reason we were selected?" "How should I know?" I shrugged. "But didn't you say these children, or whatever they are, kill anyone who goes out after midnight? If you're killing people just for breaking curfew, then who they are doesn't really matter." "And yet," August said, "perhaps there is a reason." "You still haven't answered my question," I interrupted. "How many guests are here right now, besides us?" August sighed. "That's impossible to say. Most rooms are empty. The hotel feels largely abandoned. But I've seen things during my expeditions. Once, I encountered a deranged woman wandering a corridor several floors below us. She was naked, completely naked. I tried to speak to her, but she didn't even notice me. Her eyes still haunt me. They told a story of an unimaginable fate. Another time, I found remnants of food in one of the bistros higher up. A group of people had clearly been sitting there, and then, for some reason, left in a hurry. I once saw a cat, Maylin said quietly. What? August looked startled. You never told us that. She never talks, Roger said dismissively. Maylin snorted. It was about a year ago. Early morning, before everyone woke up. It was white. You should have told us. Peter exclaimed. Maybe it knew a way out. We could have followed it. Calm down, Peter, August said. It was there for only a few seconds. Then it ran away from me and vanished. August fell silent for a moment, then added, We're not alone here, that much is certain. But there are far more empty rooms than occupied ones. The real question, Roger said, is how we all ended up so close together. You won't last long alone in a place like this, Cassandra said softly. Perhaps many people end up far from others, but they can no longer tell their story. I listened as I finished my sandwich, then asked, Do the children come into the corridors through the elevators? Yes, August confirmed. About half an hour before midnight, all the elevators are summoned downward at once. At midnight, they return, with them inside. Then why don't you go down there during the day? I asked. If they come from below, then that's probably where the exit is. And you think we haven't tried? Elizabeth replied. No matter how far down we go, there are always more floors. And then, without explanation, you end up back where you started, unless you get lost forever. I see, I said, exhausted by their strange theories. Your stories are interesting, I'll give you that, but I won't believe any of this until I see concrete proof. I stood up. I'm leaving. Of course, Roger said. I did the same when I arrived. I think we all did, except maybe Maylin. Friendly advice, he added. Watch where you're going. Otherwise, finding your way back will be nearly impossible. I barely made it back to my room before midnight, August added. Some of those who arrived with us never returned. Maybe they found the exit, I suggested. Or maybe they died, Peter blurted out. Despite barely sleeping, my head felt clearer now. I felt more like myself again. I was angry that I hadn't tried to leave earlier, and that I'd given in to fear during the night. I decided this was nothing more than a cheap trick to keep me here, exploiting my deepest fears. It was nice meeting you, I said. I'll be back with the police, who will either free you or arrest you. Goodbye. I stepped into one of the elevators, still desperately craving a cigarette. Above the elevator doors, 20 small lights indicated the floor. According to them, the elevator was on the top floor. Inside, just as August had said, there were 20 buttons. Nothing indicated which floor was the lobby, but I pressed the button for the first floor and hoped for the best. The elevator was an old model, like everything else in the hotel. Soft piano music with a melancholic tone played from the ceiling. As it descended, the elevator jolted slightly. Before exiting, I adjusted my jacket and hair, preparing to finally escape this place. Another corridor. My heart began to race, though I still refused to believe what the others had told me. It was too insane. I walked to the end of the corridor and found another elevator door. This elevator looked identical to the previous one. I rode it down to the first floor again, and emerged into yet another identical corridor. After inspecting it, I realized the entire floor was a replica of the one I'd come from, with a bistro, public restrooms, and a small library. Hello? I shouted. Is anyone here? No answer. I looked at the room numbers, hoping they would indicate how far down I'd gone. But there was no relation to the numbering on my original floor. The lowest number here was 60. I tried opening several doors, but they were locked. The next floor was the same. By now, my heart was pounding. What was this place? Were they telling the truth? No. I went lower. At some point, I had to reach the bottom. Or maybe it was underground, and I was going the wrong way. On the next floor, true panic set in. I pounded on every door. Hello? Is anyone there? Nothing. I ran to the next door. Can you hear me? Open the door, damn it. Silence. I tried nearly every door, unsuccessfully. I took another elevator down and repeated my futile attempts. But on this floor, I noticed something new. Near the ceiling floated a yellow balloon. I jumped and grabbed the string tied to it. At that exact moment, I heard footsteps approaching, running from the far end of the corridor. My blood ran cold. I saw no one, but the sound made it unmistakably clear that someone, was rushing toward me. My rational mind told me this had to be a trick. But panic took over. I dropped the balloon and slammed the elevator button. Inside, I frantically pressed the button for the 20th floor. I didn't think, instinct told me to go up. Just before the elevator doors closed, some invisible force ripped the balloon from the ceiling, and it drifted toward me. Thankfully, the doors shut in time. When I stepped out on the 20th floor, the elevator immediately went back down. I was still being pursued. I slowly backed away from the doors, then faster, until I turned and ran toward the elevator at the other end of the corridor. I needed to get back to the people I'd left behind. It finally dawned on me that I'd need help to survive this labyrinth. Every time I exited an elevator, it was immediately summoned downward again. I kept running through corridors, barely catching my breath inside the elevator cars as my breathing grew more ragged. What the hell was happening? When would I find my way back? Had I not gone high enough? I didn't recognize the room numbers, almost as if the elevators weren't stopping on the same floors they departed from. And yet whatever was hunting me always ended up on the same floor as me. I was exhausted. My body wasn't built for running. Before entering yet another elevator, I forced myself to think for a few seconds. How do I break this cycle? The doors of the elevator I'd just arrived in opened. I immediately pressed the call button for the one in front of me. To the horrifying rhythm of footsteps, the balloon came flying toward me again, and once more, I barely escaped. This time, catching my breath inside the elevator, my mind finally produced a clear thought. What if I press all the buttons? That way, I could jump out on any floor while the elevator continued upward, and whatever was chasing me wouldn't know which floor I'd exited on. I quickly pressed every button and got off on the 8th floor. I ran down the corridor and ducked into the bistro, carefully peeking around the corner. After the elevator reached the 20th floor, it was summoned downward again. Soon it started moving upward once more. The tiny lights above the elevator illuminated one by one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There. 8. I held my breath. 9. Relief flooded me. I ran back to the other elevator and went up another floor. I repeated this process several more times, nervously waiting on each level to make sure the other elevators weren't being used. Fortunately, I no longer saw any movement. Either I was no longer being pursued, or I had somehow reached a set of floors connected to a different elevator system. Nothing made sense. I didn't know what to believe. I sighed with relief, but as soon as I felt safe from the yellow balloon, insane as it sounds, I remembered that I was still lost. I went into the bistro on that floor. It was empty, but as on every level, food was plentiful. I sat down and ate, trying to figure out how to find an exit, or return to the floor where I'd first awakened. The only idea I had was to keep moving and look for an open room where I could spend the night. There was no other option, despite all the unknown horrors waiting on some of these floors. After what I just experienced, I didn't want to be in the corridor after midnight. Clearly, something was deeply wrong with this place, on the most fundamental level. After several hours of walking through empty corridors and listening to the endlessly repeating elevator music, finding nothing useful or harmful, I finally came across an open room. Its number was 246. I decided to spend the night in that room, even though it meant worrying about who it originally belonged to. In truth, I wasn't too concerned. It was probably some poor soul who had woken up alone in this place and tried to escape, never to return. The room was identical to mine. The first thing I did was try the phone again, unsuccessfully. In the corner of the room stood a minibar. I opened it. Inside was a single can of soda from a brand I had never heard of before. Blurk Fresh Blups, the label read. I checked the expiration date to make sure it hadn't been sitting there for years, but it only confused me further. The date read, 01.012.01212. But it was 1985. I shook my head and laughed. Staring at the green can with yellow stripes, I muttered, "Well, at least you weren't lying about it being fresh." In desperation, I opened the can and took a sip. It tasted sweet, but with a strange metallic aftertaste. I couldn't decide whether I liked it or not and didn't finish it. I continued inspecting the room. Everything seemed normal, whatever normal meant in this place. But in the bathroom, I found something important. There was blood everywhere, on the floor, on the walls, and in the water still filling the jacuzzi. Bloody handprints were smeared here and there. The stench was so overpowering that I had to hold my nose. Next to the tub lay a bloodied razor blade, as if someone had tried to slit their wrists in the warm water, then panicked and stopped. But there was no body. I didn't want to spend the night in that room, but I had no choice. There was no time left to search for another unlocked door. I spent most of the night awake, listening to carefree children's laughter echoing through the corridors and staring into the empty abyss beyond the window. For a brief moment, I thought I saw something far away in the darkness, not a solid object, but the vague outline of something. It lasted only a fraction of a second, so perhaps I imagined it. For an entire week, I wandered from floor to floor, sleeping in random rooms, before finally finding the one where my journey had begun. "You alive?" Roger said indifferently. They were all sitting in the bistro, seemingly ignoring one another. "Oh, James!" Cassandra exclaimed. "I was afraid I'd never see you again." August looked up from his book. "I assume you believe us now." I didn't answer. Instead, I told them about the yellow balloon and the apparent suicide scene. That seemed to intrigue them. I also mentioned the strange soda and its bizarre expiration date. "Yes," August said. "Time follows its own rules here." The last thing Cassandra heard, he continued, were air raid sirens over London during the Blitz. The last thing Peter saw, he arrived here before her, were the walls of his cell in Alcatraz in 1956. "And the last thing I saw," Roger added, "was the inside of my refrigerator. It was 1972, and I was making breakfast. Elizabeth was entertaining a client," August said, "back in 1912. And of course," Roger finished, "Maylin still hasn't told us what year she's from." Maylin looked at me with an expression of careful consideration, then said, "You're better off not knowing." "Oh, come on," Roger snapped. "Of course we want to know." "Well," I said, "then I suppose from your perspective, I'm from the future. My plane departed New York in December 1985. "No," Maylin said quietly. Everyone fell silent, waiting for her to continue, but she didn't. "For God's sake, woman," Roger exploded when it became clear she wouldn't say more. Over the next few days, I explored the library with Cassandra and Elizabeth. There were classics, as far as I could tell, but also books I'd never heard of before. Elizabeth explained that some of them were from the future. However, she added thoughtfully, I haven't found a single book published after 2050. I don't know what that means, if it means anything at all. I randomly picked up a book and opened it. Snorby, the title read. I didn't catch the author's name before closing it, but I saw the year, 2025. Another title read The Lost City of Corona. I've been reading these books for years, Elizabeth said. I think they're all fiction. That makes it hard to tell what's invented and what isn't, especially when they're from the future. Still, I believe I've learned a great deal. Just nothing that can help us. No, Cassandra agreed. There are no mentions of the Clockwork Hotel anywhere. We were all pulled out of time, but time inside the hotel moves as slowly as it does everywhere else. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. Months into years. During the first few months, I thought I would die, not from the monsters that came out after midnight, but from withdrawal. I hadn't smoked a single cigarette the entire time. Eventually, though, I began to feel better. I started exercising, using books as weights and running through the corridors. It was during one of these runs that I realized the first important clue about the hotel. I told the group immediately at dinner. This hotel cannot be infinite, I declared. And why not? August asked. I would have realized this sooner if I hadn't been so distracted by the fact that we're here. You see, the room numbers. It's a matter of probability. Our room numbers don't have any obvious meaning, right? If people are placed randomly throughout the hotel, then our rooms should have been chosen at random. Everyone stared at me, confused. Just listen, I said. In the universe, there are far more large numbers than small ones. If this hotel has an infinite number of rooms, or even a fraction of that, say 1 billion rooms, then randomly getting a small room number would be incredibly unlikely. Maybe it wasn't random, Cassandra suggested. Maybe someone chose these small numbers deliberately. Yes, possibly, I agreed. But the numbers themselves don't seem to mean anything. They're unremarkable. What about all the people who end up on other floors? Roger asked. What does that mean? If I'm right, I said, it means we're trapped in a closed system. I think the reason I eventually ended up back on this floor wasn't luck or magic. If you walk far enough, you always return to the beginning. And that, I added, is good news. Why? Peter asked. Simply put, I replied, it means there may be an exit. And we won't just end up floating in empty space outside, Elizabeth said. Honestly, I'd rather stay here. So would I, Maylin added. I don't know where we'll end up, I said, but if there's a chance, any chance, to escape, then I think we should try. The elevators go somewhere every night, I continued. And if I'm right, they're probably going to the lowest floor, the one we just haven't found yet. We just need to find it during the day. August supported me, but the others didn't share my optimism. For a long time, I tried different methods to locate the lobby. I tore down walls. I climbed onto the roof of an elevator car. The bottom of the shaft was nowhere in sight. I screamed into the ventilation grates. The only thing I never dared to do, at least not without the others, was go out into the corridors after midnight. And yet, I had begun to suspect that only at that time, and at no other, the exit would be open. Still, I couldn't convince the others. I didn't want to risk my life blindly. Even though I was absolutely certain there was at least a chance to survive, I planned and planned and planned, but never felt confident enough to face whatever was making those sounds at night. Another year passed, and Cassandra confessed that she was in love with me. I still felt that I owed loyalty to my girlfriend back in New York, but over time her face became less and less distinct in my memory. One day I realized I hadn't thought about her in a long time. Not the way I thought about Cassandra. I told myself, perhaps as a pitiful excuse, that my girlfriend had probably moved on by now, believing me dead. And a few weeks after that realization, I kissed Cassandra for the first time. It complicated everything. All this time, I had been gathering the courage to step into the corridors after midnight, to either die or escape. But now I didn't want to go alone. And Cassandra was even more afraid of leaving the rooms after midnight than I was. Convincing her was nearly impossible. So I stayed. Very little changed in the Clockwork Hotel over time. Still, one remarkable incident did occur in the years that followed. One night, my phone rang. It happened in the middle of the night, while I could still hear the children outside the door. When I picked up the receiver, the following conversation took place. "Hello?" On the other end, a woman was screaming for help. "A man just shot my friend. I'm hiding in his apartment right now. It's on, oh God, I need help. Please. He's armed. Who is this? What's happening? Who are you?" "My name is James. Do you know anything about the Clockwork Hotel?" "What is that?" The call ended. A few months later, Cassandra became pregnant. There were no condoms in the hotel, of course. And although we were careful, mistakes happen. With everyone's help, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. For the next 5 years, we raised him together. Things went well. We kept our son safe and fed. But Cassandra began to change. She loved our boy more than anything, and she was miserable knowing she could never give him a normal life outside the hotel. That misery turned into a deep depression, and about 2 years later, we finally began making serious plans to escape. By then, I had been trapped in the Clockwork Hotel for nearly 10 years. Sometimes those years felt like a few days. Other times, like an eternity. Our son was 8 years old. He knew nothing but the hotel, so he didn't miss a life he'd never lived. Still, the environment was unsuitable for him, harmful, even. We taught him basic skills, speech, reading, and so on. But we couldn't give him proper social development with other children. If we didn't escape soon, the damage would become irreversible. We told the group about our plan over dinner. As expected, everyone was skeptical. "They're everywhere," Peter said. "If you listen carefully, you can hear their little feet all over the hotel." "You can't just outrun them," Roger added. "And where would you even run?" "Well," I said, "according to my theory, the hotel consists of an unknown, but not enormous, number of floors and rooms. We know that each floor has 4 corridors arranged like a tic-tac-toe board. That means every floor connects to 8 elevators at the ends of the corridors. And I think I've figured out why it seems infinite." "And what would that be?" August asked. "You can't trust the buttons," I explained. "I believe that at some point, the elevators reach their lowest floor and then start taking you upward, even if you press the down button, creating the illusion of descent when you're actually ascending." "We would have noticed that," Maylin said. "If we went down 20 floors in one elevator, switched to another, and went down another 20 but ended up higher, we'd know." "We have noticed that elevators sometimes return us upward," I replied. "But because of all the mystery surrounding this place, we never considered that they might simply reverse direction, rather than somehow magically appearing higher up. And the system is more complex than just down and back up," I continued. "There are 8 elevators per floor, and I believe each one is linked to different ranges of floors. So when you reach the bottom on one elevator, switch to another, and press down again, it might take you up, but only to a floor between the 2 you've already visited. You get lost. You get confused. We could have tested this, made calculations, but we had too many assumptions and too little time because of the monstrous children that emerge at midnight." "And how does this help us?" Roger asked. "Think about how elevators feel," I said. "There's a subtle difference between going up and going down. You feel slightly heavier when accelerating upward, lighter when accelerating downward. If you focus, you can tell which direction you're moving." I paused, letting that sink in. If we pay attention to direction, we can avoid elevators that carry us back up, until we reach a point where all elevators move upward. That would be the lowest floor. The place where the children come from at midnight. And where the exit is. So what exactly are you planning? Maylin asked. It'll be dangerous, I said. And I'll understand if none of you want to come. But for our son's sake, Cassandra and I have decided to do everything we can to escape. But how? Roger asked. It sounds suicidal. Early morning, I said. When it's safest. We enter one elevator and go down until it feels like it's moving up. Then we go back one floor, take a different elevator whose top is our current floor, and go down again. If it goes down, we repeat the process. If it goes up, we try the third elevator, and so on, until we've tested all 8. And as I said, if all of them move upward when we press the down button, then we'll know we've reached the bottom. They all stared at me. I ignored their expressions and continued. Down there, we wait until midnight and try to see where the creatures enter the hotel. If we can't figure it out fast enough, we hide in a room and try again the next day. I'm sure this sounds perfect inside your mathematical head, Peter said. But you're making a lot of assumptions. You don't know if you'll find an empty room to hide in. Reaching the bottom could take days, weeks. And what if you encounter something dangerous during the day? This sounds like a suicide mission. It's risky, I said. But doing nothing is also risky. My son can't grow up here. He just can't. I'll help you, Elizabeth said softly. My life here has been good, compared to the streets of Constantinople. But your family deserves more. I can see that. Thank you, Cassandra said. But there isn't much you can do. You can come with us, though. All of you can. In the end, only Peter and Roger decided to join us. Elizabeth and August were too old. Maylin didn't say why she chose to stay. Later that night, just before midnight, she knocked on my door. Cassandra had just put our son to bed. What are you doing with that knife? I asked, confused. She thrust it toward my face. There was grief in her eyes, but also hatred. I didn't understand what was happening. Cassandra stood up, frozen in fear. Maylin, she said. What are you doing? Both of you, step back. I obeyed as she entered the room. Don't wake him. She pointed at our son. I can't let you leave. Why? Put the knife down. No. Listen. Tears streamed down her cheeks. What the hell is wrong with you? Cassandra cried. I don't want to hurt any of you, Maylin said, but you can't leave. You probably won't succeed, but on the small chance that you do, I can't take that risk. I tried to step closer, forcing a calm smile, hoping she'd let me disarm her. Listen. We understand. No, you don't understand a damn thing. She slashed the knife through the air again. Then explain, I said, stepping back. Why can't you let us go? I know you. You know us. I wasn't some damn janitor before I ended up here. I'm the only one who knows what's really going on. I've known all along. I don't know every detail, but I know you too. How? Cassandra asked. From history books. We stared at her in silence. I was taken last, Maylin continued. What do you mean? I was taken the farthest into the future. I'm from the year 2045. Okay, I said. I believe you. But what? Let me speak. Don't interrupt. I'm listening. I wasn't a janitor. I was a commander in the Chinese military. I wasn't important, truly, I wasn't, but I was young, ambitious, and loyal. For several months, I was stationed at a nuclear missile silo in the middle of nowhere. That's where I was before I woke up in this hotel. That morning, we received reports from everywhere. The U.S. Navy had entered the South China Sea. We could feel it in the air, something was going to happen that day. It would have been my job. She paused. It would have been my job to give the order to turn the keys. I was loyal to my country. I know I would have done it. Then I would have done it. Do you understand? I would have done it. That's the point. We aren't here because of what we did. We're here because of what we were going to do. I didn't, Cassandra began, but she was cut off. Shut up. You're Cassandra Sutcliffe. At first I wasn't sure, but over the years you've started to resemble that famous photograph of yours more and more. Your family died during the bombing of London in World War II. You grew up and became a scientist. You lived an ordinary life. No one knew your name until your book on radical pragmatism introduced a new ideology, effectivism, that spread like wildfire across the West. And you, James? She looked me straight in the eyes. I recognized you immediately. You came here from 1985, didn't you? Well, 10 years later you would have met a man named Roger Daggett, the leader of the British effectivist movement, which later became the political party Effective Democracy. I don't know why August is here. Or Elizabeth. Or Peter. Or any of the others who end up in this place. But I do know that all of us played key roles in what ultimately led to the end of the world in 2045. That's why we're here. And that's why we can never leave. And that's why I can't let you go. I'm not planning to end the world, I said. I don't think anyone can be judged for something they haven't even done yet. Midnight struck. Joyful shrieks from the children and the sound of their little feet skittering across the floor filled the corridors. Do you know what that is? Maylin said. That's the sound of all the children who burned alive that day. I didn't kill any damn children. Daddy. Our son woke up. Maylin turned away from me and looked at him with pity. I took my chance and grabbed her arm, trying to twist the knife from her hand. She resisted. Everything happened too fast. I didn't want this, but I had to protect my family. The knife went into Maylin's side. She dropped to her knees. Cassandra covered our son's eyes. I would have given the order, Maylin repeated. I would have given the order. She kept saying it until she stopped breathing. Early the next morning, we regrouped with Roger and Peter. Cassandra and I spent the rest of the night discussing whether we should tell the others what had happened to Maylin, and what she had told us. In the end, partly because we didn't want to become the kind of people we had been in her timeline, we told everyone the truth. Roger admitted that he had always felt a kind of disgust toward the society he lived in during the 70s, but the others couldn't comprehend how they might have contributed to the outbreak of a Third World War. Still, none of us believed this should put an end to our plans. We said goodbye to August and Elizabeth. Cassandra held our son in her arms as we entered the elevator. It was the beginning of our great escape. Focus on your weight, I said. Remember, when you feel lighter, we're moving down. I haven't left our floor in years, Peter said. We switched to the elevator opposite the one we were riding when it reached its lowest floor. That elevator claimed it was on the very top floor. We pressed the down button. Is it moving? Is it going down? Yes, Peter said. Yes, I said. I think so. I felt slightly lighter. The lower we went, the more afraid I became. I think we all felt it. Cassandra clutched our son tightly. I saw the fear in her eyes as she hurried through the corridors, trying to reach the elevators as quickly as possible. This one's going up, Cassandra said. We've been going down for nearly 3 hours. Yes, Roger confirmed. We went down again and tried another elevator, hoping it would also carry us upward. If it did, it might mean we'd reached the bottom, but it went down. I really hope your theory is right, Peter said. I'm starting to get nervous. What if there is no bottom? Relax, I said. We'll get there. After several more hours, we were exhausted and hungry. We had to stop for a break. It was expected, but still risky. There was no way to know how safe these floors were. We'll stop to eat at the bistro on the next floor we reach, I said, and took us down another 20 floors. It felt strange sitting in a bistro so far below. It looked exactly like the one we were used to, but we knew it was much lower. Like all the others, it had food. I checked my watch. It was lunchtime. Cassandra put food on a plate for our son and gave him dessert. He didn't fully understand the seriousness of our situation. We told him we were going on a journey. He had brought one of his favorite books from the library on our floor. The Anatomy of Mr. Snorgle. It wasn't a children's book, but rather a scientific one, filled with realistic illustrations depicting the anatomy of fictional creatures with silly names. He was reading it calmly. "If I get out of here," Peter said, "I'll dedicate my life to good deeds. I'll spend whatever time I have left helping others." "That's very noble," Cassandra said. "I don't know what I'll do," I said. "Probably just try to experience as much as I can again. Breathe fresh air." All my memories of the outside world had faded. For a moment, an image of my girlfriend in New York surfaced in my mind. I wondered what had become of her. If I had known I'd never see her again when I boarded that plane to Stockholm, it would have crushed me. Now she, and the love I'd once felt, were distant memories. Cassandra and our son were everything that mattered to me. Still, I felt a faint sadness thinking of my old love. I also thought about my poor mother. She never found closure. I had simply vanished. "Maybe," I said, "I'll visit my mother when we get back." "But where will we end up?" Roger asked. "We are displaced not only in space, but in time. The main thing is to get out of here," Peter said. "I don't care where I end up. I'll be happy even if I go back to Alcatraz." Before continuing our way down, we all went to the public restroom together. I stared out the windows into the void while I waited for the others to finish in their stalls. The attempt to escape this place seemed almost foolish, seeing the infinite nothingness before me. Suddenly, I heard something behind the restroom door. The door was closed, but there was a small, darkened window at the top. Through it, I saw someone, or something, pass by. "Hey," I whispered, "there's someone outside." "Damn it, you're not joking, are you?" Roger said. "Don't talk and don't flush." Slowly, everyone emerged from their stalls. "Daddy, what's happening?" my son asked. I crouched down and smiled at him, hiding my anxiety. "We're going to have to be very quiet." "Do you think you can do that?" "You'll have to be very brave, like one of the heroes in your books." "Okay." I stood up. My son hugged his mother tightly. She took him in her arms. I continued, "I just saw someone pass by the door. Maybe it was another guest. I'm not sure. It looked like a person, or something else," Roger whispered. I didn't have time to think about it. It had been a shadow. "What do we do, darling?" Cassandra asked. "What choice do we have?" Peter said. "We're going to have to run. I'll hold the door for you. The shadow passed the door to the right, so you'll have to run in that direction as fast as possible." "Understood?" "And you?" Cassandra said. "Why should you hold the door? You have a child." "Because I'm the fastest runner." "No," Peter said. "She's right. You go second. I'll hold the door. Your boy needs you." "There's no reason," I began. "Like I said, from this moment on, I'm going to help other people," Peter said. "That is a promise I intend to keep." We didn't argue further. Not because I thought he was right to risk his life for me, but because there was no more time for discussion. Silently, we approached the door. I'll count to 3. Then I'll open the door. I nodded. Cassandra pressed our son to her chest, then she nodded too. Roger clenched his jaw and took a deep breath. Peter counted, 1, 2, 3. He forced the door open. Cassandra went out first, and we followed her. Someone was crying in the corridor. It was the crying of a little girl, close, yet somehow like an echo from far away. My son looked back at it over Cassandra's shoulder. We ran faster than ever, but somehow it felt as if we were moving in slow motion. The expression on my son's face, an expression of unfathomable sadness, told me everything I needed to know about what he saw. I knew it was something bad, something evil. "Don't look," I said, gasping for air. "Close your eyes." Halfway to the elevator, Peter shouted to us, "Stop. It's just a little girl. Keep running, Peter." Just a few moments ago, that girl was tall enough to be seen through the restroom window. He didn't answer. Cassandra pressed the elevator button several times when we reached the end of the corridor. Peter stood in the middle. "What the hell is he doing?" Roger said. "What is that in his hand?" Cassandra asked. "The little girl gave it to him," my son said. "I don't see any little girl," Roger said. "Where is she?" "She's right there, Roger," my son replied. "Oh my God, he's holding a gun." "Peter, what are you doing?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pressed the gun to his temple. Cassandra pressed our son's face against her stomach. The elevator arrived. A shot rang out. Peter collapsed to the floor, and the child's sobbing stopped. Inside the elevator, Roger asked my son what he had seen. I found it inappropriate and tried to intervene, but my son wanted to talk about it. It was a little girl, a bit older than me, I think. She looked very, very sad, and her face was so dirty. Oh, and she was wearing boys' clothes. You know, like the soldiers in that book, Daddy. It was yellow. Like a uniform? Roger asked. Was it a uniform? My son became flustered by the aggressive questioning and blushed. "Peter will be okay." "Of course he will," Cassandra said, before Roger could say anything else. "My sweet boy, of course he will. August and Elizabeth will help him," I said. But Peter was dead, and we were all asking ourselves the same question: what could a little girl have said to him that made him shoot himself? 2 hours later, we finally reached the bottom floor. It was filthier here than on the other floors, as if someone had looted all the rooms. By the looks of it, it could have happened 100 years ago. Fortunately, one of the rooms was open. In the room, as far as we could tell, there was nothing special. All that was left for us to do was wait for midnight. So, Roger said, "How do we do this?" "We need to wait in the middle of one of the corridors," I said. "And then, I don't know, maybe they'll come out of a secret door. Look, they could enter any of the corridors on this floor. If we don't see exactly where they're coming from, we'll have to go back to the room and stand in a different corridor tomorrow." I damn well don't like this plan. Close to midnight, I held my sleeping son in my arms. I had never been so nervous before. I didn't take my eyes off the clock on the wall, and neither did any of us. Roger sat on the floor, his back against the wall. No one said a word. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock. 30 minutes before midnight, Roger stood up. All the elevators began to move. "The elevators," I said. "They're coming down." "Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit," Roger repeated to himself. "Keep calm. The children had to enter from somewhere before getting into the elevators. So just keep your eyes open." "Open for what?" "We don't freaking know what to look for. This is madness. Do you hear me?" "Shut up," Cassandra shouted. 15 minutes remained until midnight. We all watched the lights above the elevator at the end of the corridor. A few more floors. The first light came on, the one indicating our floor. "This is it," I whispered. There was no chime, and the light above the elevator went out. "What happened?" Cassandra asked. "Why didn't it stop?" "It went down one more floor. It went down to a floor that we cannot reach." One by one, the elevators began to move again. This time, they were going up. My eyes were glued to the clock. Tick, tock, tick, tock, tick, tock. For the first time in years, I wanted a cigarette. A minute before midnight, the elevator in front of us returned. "What do we do?" Roger demanded an answer. I tried to think, but it was already too late. The elevator doors opened, and the joyful voices of children filled the corridors. "Into the room! Into the room!" I shouted. The very second I closed the door, the entire corridor filled with the voices and footsteps of children. "I have a plan," I said. "It's simple. Tomorrow before midnight, we will be inside one of the elevators. They will take it down to the floor we can't get to ourselves. Understood? It's our only hope. When we get there, we'll have to improvise." Most of the next day was spent in silence, waiting nervously. The only conversation we had was at dinner, when Cassandra asked, "Do you think I really could write a book?" "I don't know, honey, I think you could. Just don't write about the nonsense Malin talked about." I tried to laugh, but it sounded hollow. "No, I would only write about love. Maybe fairy tales for children." "That's a wonderful idea. You've always been such a good storyteller for our boy." We entered the elevator an hour before midnight. "We need to press ourselves against the walls, close to the doors," I said. "And when they open, we'll just try to slip out while they are entering the elevator." "Hell!" Roger said. "We're going to die. We're going to die. We're going to die." "Stop it!" Cassandra shouted. "You're scaring my son." Our son was crying. He couldn't understand what was happening. "Sorry," Roger said, and began to anxiously repeat the word. "Sorry, sorry, sorry, sorry." Sad piano music continued to play and play from the ceiling. There was no clock in the elevator, so we couldn't keep track of the time. My own watch had stopped working years ago, but suddenly, with a lurch, the elevator began to move down. Roger threw up on the floor. "Sorry, sorry, sorry, sorry." "Here we go," I said. Outside there was not a sound, just like inside the elevator, except for the constant music. We all held our breath. I prepared myself, but I didn't know for what. And then the automatic doors slid open. We didn't see any of the children, but the elevator was filled with echoes and laughter. I took Cassandra's hand and, without thinking, acting on instinct, I pushed forward. Something touched my other hand. It felt like hair, and somehow I knew immediately that it belonged to a little girl. I couldn't see her. And yet, I knew. I didn't just know it was a girl's hair, but that it was the hair of a specific girl. Flashes raced through my mind, filling me with a fit of indescribable guilt. She was playing outside with her friends. She was standing on the side of the road, looking at an army in yellow uniforms slowly marching along a foggy country road. A light 1,000 times brighter than the sun. The little girl went blind in an instant. I started to cry. It was my fault. I knew it somehow. It was my fault. Myling was right. A part of me, a large part, wanted to give up. The void outside was now inside me, but I forced myself to think of my son and kept moving forward. It felt like an eternity had passed, but it might have been only a few minutes. Pressed against the wall with Cassandra beside me, I watched as Roger fell to his knees right by the elevator. His hair was flying in all directions, as if he were standing in the middle of a storm. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," he kept repeating, but this time he said it sincerely. In his hand was some shiny object, a knife or a shard of glass. He held it to his throat and fell silent for a second, and then he slit his own throat. Blood gushed onto the floor, and his body was dragged into the elevator by invisible children. The doors closed, and everything went quiet. If not for my love for my son, my only reason for staying alive, I would have killed myself just as Roger did. "It's my fault," Cassandra said, weeping. "It's my fault." "No, no, no," I said, knowing she was experiencing the same thing I was. "We might be guilty, but we are different people now." I wanted to comfort her, but inside I felt the same as she did. "Where are we?" my son asked. Only now did we look around. We were in the lobby. It was as large as the floors above, but open. The elevators were still moving up. Once, this lobby had been luxurious. Now ash covered everything, the sofas and armchairs, the columns, the large fountain in the center, and the empty reception desk. "Hotel Clockwork," the sign read in dusty gold letters above the desk. Opposite it was a glass wall revealing a view of the void outside. In its center was a revolving door. At first hesitantly, and then with some haste, we walked toward it. Halfway there, I stopped. On the floor, covered in ash, lay a newspaper. I picked it up and showed it to Cassandra. It smelled as old as it looked. On the cover was a photograph of Roger and me in yellow, metal-decorated uniforms. The headline read, "The Final Summit at the Hotel Clockwork." In the revolving door, there was space for only one person in each segment, and it led only into the void. "There's nothing there," Cassandra said. "You go first," I said. "I don't know where these doors will take us, but we must take this leap of faith. I'll be right behind you." She pressed our son to her chest and stepped into the door, looking back at me. I entered the next segment and placed my hand on the glass. Just as Cassandra was about to step into the void, she disappeared, and then I disappeared too. I was awakened by a beam of sunlight. I was sitting in an airplane seat. For a second, I thought it had all been a dream, but then I heard the buzzing of flies around me and smelled the scent of rotting furniture. This plane was not in the air. I was wearing all my old clothes. The plane had no doors. I looked outside. There, I saw many old planes standing in rows in the middle of the desert. Somehow, it took a while before I remembered Cassandra and our little boy. But when I did, I panicked. They were nowhere to be found. I searched the plane and shouted their names, but to no effect. However, someone heard me. An old man, standing next to a car more modern than I had ever seen. I assumed he worked at this place. He helped me get out of the plane. As soon as I stepped onto the ground, I took a deep breath. Fresh air at last. The old man lit a cigarette. He asked if I wanted one, but I refused. "So how does a man like you end up inside one of these old planes?" the man asked as he drove me to the nearest town. "It's a long story," I said. "Actually, I'm looking for my wife and child, Cassandra and—" "Hey, I know this is a stupid question, but could you tell me what year it is?" "Spring. 2019, the man said. "What about your family? Are they lost or something?" "Yes, you haven't seen them?" "My wife is about this tall." "Anne?" "No, sir, I'm afraid not. I just come here to take photos. No one else ever comes here." I didn't tell the man the rest of my story. He wouldn't have believed me anyway. I assumed that Cassandra must have ended up in London, where she was taken from, just as I ended up where I was taken from. However, I couldn't be sure that she appeared there at the same time I appeared here. For all I knew, she could have appeared in the distant past or the distant future. I took a room in a cheap motel in the town the man brought me to. I sat on the bed, just as I had when I first arrived at the Hotel Clockwork. I reached into my jacket pocket and found the book I had been reading on the plane all those years ago. I had long forgotten its title, and now that I read it, a chill ran down my spine. Radical Pragmatism by Cassandra Sutcliffe. I set the book aside, afraid of what its contents would do to me. But now, several months later, I am holding it in my hands again. I searched for Cassandra and our son everywhere. I used the amazing technologies available in these strange times. I went to London and went door to door in every suburb that was bombed during World War II. But I never found them. I miss them so much. It was this book that led me to her. Perhaps it is naive to think it can do so again, but I must try. Well, that's all for today. That is the ending of this story. There probably could have been a sequel, but the author apparently didn't write it, because all that's here are two parts of one story. He wrote the second part sometime after the first, and the third, apparently, is either not needed or that's it. Well, actually, yes, why is it needed here if our main character returned and everything is kind of normal? Anyway, okay. Now I'll tell you my opinion in more detail, but first let me ask you, how did you like the story? Did you like it or not? Be sure to write your opinion in the comments, what was unclear, what was clear, what you think about all this in general, and what score on a 10-point scale you would give the story. As for me, I'll say a few words. Overall, the story is very interesting, rich, and well written. For Reddit, it's really well written. The story came out, it seems, 6 years ago, specifically in 2019, just like in our ending, like spring. It came out in the spring of 2019. Overall, the impression is purely positive. At first, when I just started reading, it strongly reminded me of two things. First is Stephen King's The Shining. I haven't seen the movie, but I read the story about halfway through, and I personally traced some similar vibes. This hotel, all of that, really, really cool. And the main character was associated a bit, especially when he and Cassandra had their son, with that guy, Jack, I think his name was, right? One of the main characters in The Shining. And then I kept wondering how this would all turn out. I thought the following outcome was possible, that either this whole place is something like a hub for souls who gather here after death, but they don't remember that they died. Someone from different years, this hotel is like a collection of these souls who didn't find peace because of some sense of guilt. And indeed, the sense of guilt turned out to be reality. Apparently, the characters just didn't know about it. I thought they would just live here, find out the reasons, and then, when it's revealed, they would finally find peace. That was the first version. And the second version I had, this is probably going to be a spoiler for someone. Anyway, there's a movie, I don't remember the title, but I think it's also based on King. Anyway, there's also a gathering of people, maybe 6 or 8, stuck in one place. I think it was a motel then, or something like that, and they couldn't get out. And as they found out more secrets, they died or disappeared, and it was unclear what was happening. It all turned out to be a plot twist that was revealed in the ending. I won't spoiler what it is, but I recommend you watch that movie. You'll understand why I had an associative link with it. Regarding the ending, I only slightly disliked that everything was a bit rushed at the very end. The first part of the story is very detailed. In my opinion, the time skips there were perceived normally. But at the very end, when they came up with this plan with the elevators, or rather, our main character came up with it, it felt a bit strange. Specifically, when they reached the bottom floor, heard the elevators again, hid somewhere. I didn't quite understand which doors were opening and where they led when they finally got out. I didn't quite get that moment with the elevator, the last one that leads to the very bottom floor. At what point did Roger die? Was it when they were all in the elevator and they arrived at the lobby? That thing happened, but apparently not. Most likely, when the elevator opened on the bottom floor, they tried to run into it, but apparently Roger didn't succeed. And, well, he did what he did. The children probably dragged him into another elevator. But the elevator that the main character, his wife, and son managed to run into, they made it. That girl was standing there with them in the elevator, right, along with some other children. And they were riding. At first, when those feelings of guilt appeared, I thought that maybe the hero had hit that girl with a car or something. There's another reference to The Shining for you. But no, it turned out to be his future, which that Chinese woman talked about. It immediately flashed in my memory. All those deaths, he could have been involved in one way or another in the future. In the end, they arrived on the elevator and everything is fine. It's good that they arrived, good that they got out. Cool. The moment when they were getting out of the hotel reminded me of a scene in the very last season of Black Mirror. There was an episode where the actress realizes she is in a film. They reproduced old film footage in a way that introduced real people from the present time as characters so they could play a role in a new adaptation. I hope you understand what I'm talking about. It's hard to structure thoughts after reading the story. And there was also a moment when the character realized it was all a fiction, this reality, and tried to get beyond the boundaries of this film, and there was just total darkness. Just like here, they basically got out of the hotel into the void. But what actually happened in the end? It's unclear how the hero ended up in 2019, why he didn't return to his own time. I first assumed that when he woke up, he might have dreamed it all on the plane. But it turned out he somehow teleported through time. It would have been cool, I think, if the old man who picked him up was actually his and Cassandra's son, who returned with Cassandra to her time. Cassandra eventually wrote that book he read on the plane and found in his jacket. And the son grew up. And he was the one waiting for him in this rusty plane in 2019 and picked him up. That would have been really cool. That would have been a good plot twist, that this old man who found him is his son. But he's just an old man. So it's unclear what happened to the son, what happened to Cassandra. Everything happens as the Chinese woman said, except for the fact that our main character returned to 2019. And it turns out, knowing everything that exists, he probably won't make any sudden moves. But also without some logical conclusion, as it seems to me, the ending turned out for the most part. Those are my thoughts. I hope I explained myself clearly. Sorry for the moments where I stutter or jump around. I have that. I start talking about one thing, then jump to another, forget what I was originally saying, and can't conclude. Anyway, everything is fine, I think. I'll give it a score out of 10. I think a solid 6 fits here, because the first part is good. The second part fell a little short, in my subjective opinion, and many things remained unanswered. That's why it's a 6. But for something written in 2019 and on Reddit, it's very, very good. So, that's how it is. What do you think? As I said, write in the comments. And if you liked the video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll say goodbye for now and wish everyone luck. See you in new videos.